On July 29, 1913, students at Hester Howe Vacation School in Toronto gathered for a unique hygiene lesson, learning the proper way to blow their noses. This effort was part of a broader movement in the early 20th century that emphasized public health education to prevent the spread of illness. On April 22, 1943, the crew of the United States ship Trigger captured an extraordinary photograph of Mount Fuji through the submarine's periscope during a war patrol in the Pacific theater of World War II. This iconic image juxtaposes the serene beauty of Japan's most famous peak with the harsh realities of war. In the 1920s, posing for photographs in the headless horseman style became a popular and whimsical trend, inspired by Washington Irving's timeless tale. These creative portraits, often featuring costumes and props that made it appear as though the subject had no head, were influenced by stage performances and silent films. On November 12, 1966, Buzz Aldrin took an unforgettable self-portrait during the Gemini 12 mission, with the vivid Earth reflected in his visor. This photograph captured a moment of human ingenuity and exploration as Aldrin ventured outside the spacecraft to perform historic spacewalks. On November 24, 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald was being escorted through the Dallas Police Headquarters when Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner wearing a gray fedora, stepped forward and fatally shot him. Occurring just 2 days after Oswald was charged with the assassination of President John Kennedy, the shocking event was broadcast live, captivating the nation. Ruby's impulsive act silenced the only suspect, fueling decades of conspiracy theories and deepening public distrust in the investigation of one of the most pivotal events in American history. In September 1917, horses serving on the Western Front were immersed in baths containing a solution to protect against skin diseases, highlighting their indispensable role in World War I logistics. These animals, relied upon for transporting supplies and equipment, required diligent care to remain effective in the harsh conditions of war. In 1934, the first ever Mickey Mouse balloon debuted at the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade in New York City, marking the beginning of a cherished tradition. Created with input from Walt Disney, the balloon celebrated the immense popularity of Mickey Mouse and highlighted the growing impact of animation on American culture. During the Battle of Tarawa in November 1943, a United States Marine fired at a Japanese pillbox, a heavily fortified position that posed a significant threat to advancing American forces. This battle was a critical component of the broader effort to capture the Gilbert Islands, marking one of the first major amphibious assaults in the Pacific theater of World War II. In 1936, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and Associate Director Clyde Tolson were photographed attending the prize fight between heavyweight champions Joe Louis and Jack Sharkey in New York City. The presence of FBI officials at such a high-profile event captured the Bureau's increasing awareness of cultural movements and influential figures in 1930s America. In January 1973, a 30-year-old Joe Biden took the oath of office as the youngest senator in the history of the United States, representing the state of Delaware. His election brought a youthful energy to the Senate, reflecting the changes in a nation undergoing political and cultural shifts. Early in his Senate career, Biden focused on civil rights and foreign policy, laying the groundwork for a lifetime in public service that would eventually lead him to the Oval Office. In 1955, Marshal Rondon, celebrated as the last Banderante, was recognized as one of the greatest explorers of the Amazon rainforest in the 20th century. His extraordinary expeditions mapped over 50,000 kilometers of land and waterways, and he oversaw the construction of more than 2,270 kilometers of telegraphic lines through the dense jungle, revolutionizing communication in remote areas. Guided by his principle, "Die if needed be, kill never," Rondon demonstrated a profound respect for indigenous peoples and the environment, establishing himself as a pioneer of exploration, a symbol of conservation, and an advocate for peaceful coexistence in the Amazon. On August 1, 1914, in the streets of Berlin, a crowd gathered to hear a German officer read the Kaiser's mobilization order, signaling the nation's entry into World War I. The announcement followed the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which had set the stage for the growing conflict. In 1945, Jewish prisoners were freed from a death train, a haunting symbol of the Holocaust and the horrific measures taken by the Nazis in their campaign of extermination. As the Allies pushed forward, they discovered these trains, used to transport victims to concentration camps under unbearable conditions. In November 1916, Canadian artillerymen stationed on the Somme front paused to inscribe a seasonal message on a shell for their 60-pounder field gun, combining humor and camaraderie amidst the hardships of World War I. This small act reflected the soldiers' resilience and provided a morale boost during one of the war's deadliest campaigns. In March 1943, German Brazilians living in Rio de Janeiro were arrested on charges of espionage, a stark reflection of the anxiety gripping Brazil during World War II. As the nation joined the Allied forces, suspicions of sabotage and subversion cast a shadow over communities of German descent, many of whom had been part of Brazilian society for decades. In the winter of 1941, a German supply train was vital to the logistics of Operation Barbarossa, the ambitious plan to invade the Soviet Union. These trains carried troops, ammunition, and other essentials across the harsh and unforgiving terrain of the Eastern Front. Yet, as the winter deepened and Soviet resistance intensified, the strain on these supply lines became insurmountable, causing the German advance to grind to a halt. In 1945, American POWs were freed from Berga concentration camp near Schlieffen, Germany, where they had endured horrific suffering and starvation. Captured during the Battle of the Bulge, these men faced forced labor and relentless hardships, a grim testament to the darker aspects of wartime captivity. On April 4, 1949, 12 nations came together in Washington, D.C. to sign the North Atlantic Treaty, marking the creation of NATO, a landmark alliance in response to the challenges of the post-war era. With tensions rising in Europe, the treaty aimed to unite member nations in a collective defense pact against potential threats from the Soviet Union. On May 21, 1914, Emmeline Pankhurst was arrested outside Buckingham Palace while attempting to deliver a petition to King George V, urging him to support women's voting rights. A leader of the Women's Social and Political Union, Pankhurst had long championed the cause of women's suffrage, using strategic actions to amplify the movement's message. In 1944, Sally Wadsworth, a Lockheed Martin worker, was part of the wave of women who helped produce the innovative P-38 Lightning, a fighter aircraft that played a key role during World War II. Working on the fuselage in California, Wadsworth symbolized the dedication and resilience of women who stepped into industrial roles traditionally held by men. In January 1901, the Spindletop oil field near Beaumont, Texas, erupted in a spectacular gusher, sending oil shooting 150 feet into the air and heralding the beginning of the American oil boom. This discovery not only transformed Texas into a powerhouse of oil production, but also marked a turning point in the United States' economic and industrial growth. In the 1960s, a group of Chilean economists, famously called the Chicago Boys, trained under Milton Friedman at the University of Chicago, became instrumental in implementing neoliberal reforms under the Pinochet dictatorship. Their approach involved privatizing state industries, deregulating markets, and opening trade barriers, aiming to rejuvenate Chile's struggling economy. On January 6, 1945, during the Battle of Lingayen Gulf, a D-3A Valdive bomber crashed into the United States ship Columbia, resulting in the tragic loss of 17 sailors. This attack was part of a larger wave of kamikaze assaults that day, during which 21 American ships sustained direct hits from these determined pilots. In April 1962, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi of Iran and his wife, Queen Farah, shared a joyful day at Disneyland, where they joined Walt Disney on the thrilling Matterhorn bobsleds. Their visit came during a transformative era for Iran, reflecting the Shah's fascination with Western culture and technological advancements. In 1944, American soldiers advancing through Europe arrived at the Maginot Line near Hochwald West Fortress, Block 13, where they closely examined its extensive fortifications. Constructed by France during the 1920s and 1930s, the Maginot Line was a symbol of advanced military engineering, featuring bunkers, artillery positions, and elaborate defenses aimed at halting a German invasion. In 1959, Ernest Hemingway, actor Alec Guinness, and playwright Noel Coward came together in Havana, a city pulsing with artistic energy and political change as the Cuban Revolution unfolded. Hemingway, who had long called Cuba home, found the island to be both a haven and a muse during this turbulent time. Before the Battle of Wuhan in 1938, soldiers of the Republic of China prepared for one of the largest confrontations of the Second Sino-Japanese War. This battle represented a pivotal moment in the fight against Japanese aggression, as Chinese forces sought to defend the strategically critical city of Wuhan, a key transportation and communication hub.